What's going on, family? Scrapbook Boxing Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. We're going to continue examining 100 years of world championship fights. We're in the middle of the 1930s in this series, but I wanted to step back a few fights prior into the bare knuckle era. Now you're looking at Peter Jackson, Black Prince. He's to your right. And Gentleman Jim Corbett is to your left. Now, these two men would get it on May 21st, 1891. This was before the Carnival of Champions would take place. And this is the opportunity both these men were fighting for. A chance to fight John O'Sullivan for his bare knuckle championship fight. He had one more coming up, and that was with Paddy Ryan. I want to show you something that exposes John O'Sullivan. And these men here would fight in California at the Athletic Club in San Francisco. The fight went 61 rounds. And the reason why I won 61 rounds, let me take you on a short tour here. Because Peter Jackson was winning the fight. And you had a fighter by the name of Little Chocolate. His name was George Godfrey. He was a colored heavyweight champion at that time. And it was an offer made for George Godfrey, Little Chocolate, to face John O'Sullivan. And John O'Sullivan claimed that he needed some time or something like that, something to that effect. He needed time. So George Godfrey then telegrammed Black Prince Peter Jackson. So they scheduled a fight. John O'Sullivan telegrams back that he's willing to fight with George Godfrey. But George Godfrey had already booked a fight with Peter Jackson because they were trying to get the fight with John O'Sullivan. But the games were being played. So Peter Jackson would face Gentleman Jim Corbett. And it went 61 rounds because Peter Jackson was defeating Corbett. And they were thinking that the Black Prince, Peter Jackson, would suffer from heat exhaustion and he would collapse. Never happened. So they called it a draw because they realized that at that point, John O'Sullivan had already drew the color line. Jackson would never get a shot anyway, because Godfrey never got a shot. So then Peter Jackson would face Godfrey, and he would defeat him and become the colored heavyweight champion of the world. So that defeat of Jackson actually was a draw, but I consider it a defeat. It was a defeat of an opportunity is what it was. It gave Corbett an opportunity to face John O'Sullivan in 1892. But I want to show you something that exposes John O'Sullivan. Before I show you John O'Sullivan, let me just show you. I have 5 books like this. It's 1,000 pages each of bare knuckle fighters. I'm just showing you a little bit here before we get to what I want to talk to you about with John O'Sullivan. And this is basically this posing fighters. This particular scrapbook series I have here, 5 books of 1,000 pages each. All the men are like this posing. Now, in addition to that, I'm going to show you something else. In fact, let me show you. This man right here, his name is Harlem Tommy Murphy. He had some good fights with the Barbados Demon, Joe Walcott. Murphy was a champion. He was a welterweight champion. But let me show you a couple other things. Hold on. Now, Mike Twin Sullivan had a brother by the name of Jack Twin Sullivan. Two of them. And Sam Langford, that's Mike Twin Sullivan right there in the far corner to your right. Mike Sullivan and Jack Sullivan was approached by Sam Langford. He offered to fight both of them at the same time, one before the other. Winner take all. And they both refused. Now here you're looking at Bill Richmond to your left, Tom Molyneux to your right. They were the first champions, or the first fighters in general, out of America. Two black fighters. Bill Richmond would be the trainer for Tom Molyneux. Tom Molyneux would face a fighter by the name of Jim Cribb. And, I'm sorry, his name was Tom Cribb. Tom Molyneux would face Tom Cribb. And this was in 1810. And in his corner was Bill Richmond. He was more of a welterweight in today's standards. And Molyneux was more of a cruiserweight, light heavyweight in today's standards. And what's funny about that, here you have Yankee Sullivan. He was also a champion. But you had a fighter by the name of Jack Slack. He was the trainer for Bill Richmond for a short bit. Got him started in England. Just show you some of books that I have here. Bare Knuckle. These are 5 books I told you I have of 1,000 pages each of bare knuckle fighters. Got them all leaned up here just to try to show you. Now this fighter's here, his name is Jack Ash. He was considered a welterweight. I'm not going to bore you with their stories. I pretty much know all their stories. Let's move on. I want to show you something with John O'Sullivan. Show you a few more things before the John O'Sullivan, the point I'm trying to prove with John O'Sullivan. This Tommy O'Keefe of Philadelphia. He was a lightweight junior welterweight. He was out of Philadelphia. And you had a lot of fighters like him coming up during his time. Now this fighter's here, his name was Johnny Ney. He fought out of Minnesota. He was a chief sparring partner, if you will, for Mike O'Dowd. Mike O'Dowd was a middleweight champion, took the title away from Al McCoy. And he would lose that title to Johnny Wilson in 1920. Speaking of Mike O'Dowd. But Johnny Ney was a chief sparring partner. Pretty good lightweight he was for Mike O'Dowd. Here you have Kid Alberts. He was out of Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania. He was a main sparring partner, if you will, for the Pittsburgh Windmill. His name is Harry Webb. Kid Alberts. Now this is a perfect way to set this up. His name is Alf Mansfield. He was a sparring partner, and a pretty good fighter he was, out of England, for Jim Smith. Now, I'm going to tie all this together in a moment. I'm trying to clear this for you. Jim Smith was a light heavyweight who went up to heavyweight because he wanted to fight in a tournament with Jake Kilrain. I'm going to show you Jake Kilrain one moment. These two men, Jake Kilrain and Jim Smith, would fight each other in 1887. It was the first time for a belt, the Police Gazette belt, that Foxwood made. Fox is the one who actually discovered the Police Gazette magazine 1845. Let me just show you something one moment. Now I'm showing you Jake Kilrain. He faced Jim Smith in 1887. I'm going to show you why what I'm saying all ties to one another. This is Jake Kilrain. Now, I have 5,000 pictures like this in the books that came from Police Gazette. They're inserts. Just about every fighter I have in the collection. But this is Jake Kilrain. So I want to show you something, an article. In one moment. Now the article I'm going to show you involves Patty Ryan and John O'Sullivan. Patty Ryan is to your right and John O'Sullivan is to your left. This is John O'Sullivan. And this is Patty Ryan. All right, so let me show you the article that I'm having you wait so long for. Hold on one second. Now, this book I'm showing you here, I have 10 of these books. They're all 1,000 pages each. All right, these are articles, newspaper articles, all right, or Police Gazette. And the reason why I'm showing you this, now these books are heavy, that's why I have to be careful. They're 50 pounds, 50 each. Now, if you think I'm kidding you, I'm going to show you a side. This is how thick the book is, okay? That's one side, and the other side is just as thick. I mean, it's 1,000 pages. And I have, okay, that's the other side. Now, I want to show you something here. A lot of this is John O'Sullivan. Let me open this up so you can see better. So you can see here, right, this is the date. I want you to see the date, June 4th, 1887. All right, so let's look at something here, okay? That's where I get all my information. I study all these. I don't go to box rec and none of that kind of stuff. I go to the direct source. All right, so let's look at this for a reason. Okay, I'm trying to focus. The reason why Sullivan does not agree to arrange a match with Jake Kilrain is because he has no one to back him. To contend according to London prize ring rules, all right? $5,000 a side bet and the championship. Now, Patty Ryan says he will have another go with Sullivan. I'm trying to let you follow this as I'm focusing here. When the latter reaches San Francisco, speaking of John O'Sullivan, and that he will, he's speaking of himself, Patty Ryan, let Sullivan determine whether he shall be bare knuckle or glove. All right, let's stop right there for one moment. Now, this entire book gives you all the information you need to know about what went on during that time. I got 5 of these. All right, and these are the original articles. It's original newspapers that took place during that time. Let me see something here for a second. I know I have to get a better camera here. I was just trying to show you. Let me see. All right, that's June 4th, 1887. All right, so basically, what I'm trying to explain to you is John O'Sullivan turned down a lot of fights. He didn't want to fight with gloves on. So it got to a point where Ryan said, you know what, the hell with it. You want to fight me. I'm willing to fight you with or without gloves. And I'll show you an article, but I don't really want to post that, where Peter Jackson wrote him a letter. And Peter Jackson asked for a fight, winner take all. John O'Sullivan refused to fight him. Old Chocolate, I got that article. That's George Godfrey. He turned down that fight. And what I'm trying to explain to you is John O'Sullivan was known to challenge any son of a bitch in the world, in the house, as he proclaimed. But he turned down a lot of fights, especially with black fighters, and fights where he felt as though he didn't have an advantage. All right, this entire book here is John O'Sullivan. 1,000 pages. All John O'Sullivan. So you can't tell me anything I want to know about John O'Sullivan. I have. I've heard it. I've read it. I've heard stories from old-time historians. I know about John O'Sullivan. Let's move on. I'm trying to focus this for you. Let me show you one more thing here, and we'll move on. I want to show you something else. But here, Jim Smith and Jake Kilrain. All right, and I'll show you the International Championship. I have a 20-page write-up on this, and fighting poses and everything. Scenes and sketches which illustrate the forthcoming fight between Jake Kilrain of America and Jim Smith of England. Now these two fought each other 1887 for the Police Gazette belt. That was the first championship belt between these two men, two different countries. And I could break down to you how it became lineage and how it became unified. But this was the first fight. Now, John O'Sullivan was supposed to face Jake Kilrain. And he was in line to face Jim Smith. But he didn't have the money at the time in 1887. He didn't have the backing. He was out of shape. He used to drink all the time. He missed out on an opportunity. But in 1889, he would wind up fighting Jake Kilrain. And that was some fight. That really was some fight. Then he would turn around and face Corbett in 1892. This was that massive fight of John O'Sullivan and Jake Kilrain. One of the most brutal fights in bare knuckle history. Well, I should say brutal championship fights. By the way, that Kilrain and Sullivan fight took place in 1889. Here you have Bob Fitzsimmons, Gentleman Jim Corbett. And it was in defense of Corbett's championship belt that he won from John O'Sullivan in 1892. And the fight took place March 17th, 1897. It's at Carson City, Nevada. And Bob Fitzsimmons would knock out Jim Corbett with a famous solar plexus punch. I have about 60 pages on that fight alone, all kind of illustrations and everything else. So I just wanted to show you a little bit, because I don't think I covered that. I wanted to include that in this series. Give you a complete view of how this book looks. And pictures like this, I have one book of page after page of color pictures like this of the Police Gazette, of the championship fights, and everything else in between. Yeah, Bob Fitzsimmons. Three-weight division champion. Middleweight, when he took the title away, Jack Dempsey non-Pavel. Light heavyweight, took the title away from George Gardner, didn't defend it. And he knocked out Jim Corbett for the heavyweight championship belt in Carson City. He used to be a blacksmith, and he sparred with Bob Armstrong, who was a colored heavyweight champion. Picked up the title after Peter Jackson had relinquished the title and became the colored heavyweight champion. But Bob Fitzsimmons was sparring with Armstrong for most of his fights. And then, of course, you had James A. Jeffries, took the title away from Bob Fitzsimmons. Got James J. Corbett to your left and John O. Sullivan to your right. You have Joe Jeanette to your left and Sam McVea to your right. And I'm showing you this because they had 3 fights in 1909. One of the fights they had was a war. 47 knockdowns, 27 knockdowns of Jeanette alone. But Jeanette would wind up on top. He would become the colored heavyweight champion of the world. And this is another book that I have. This is all black fighters. The entire book, 1,000 pages each. I have 2 of those books. I just wanted to show you that sequence of these 2 men here. Never shown this book before. I'll just show you these 2 fighters, because if I show you other pictures that don't exist in any book you're going to find in a store anywhere, they'll get scanned. So I'll just show you these 2 here. I'll be gracious enough and show you one more. This is Sam Langford. This is Jack Johnson. They were both colored heavyweight champions. You know the story on both these men. All right, I'm going to get back to 100 years of world championship fights. Both these men were champions, and they belong in this series. All right, Scrapbook Boxing Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. All great fights and all great fighters will never be forgotten on my channel. All right, let's move on. Back to the 1930s. I'll show you one more. So this is the Dixie Kid and Joe Walcott. They had a controversial welterweight championship fight, 1904. Dick L. Sullivan, who was the referee, had bet on Dixie Kid. And when he found out about it, Dixie Kid was champion, but Walcott would become champion once again, and it should have never been a championship fight because Walcott was over 2.5 pounds overweight. Here you have George Dixon, the first black athlete ever. He was the first fighter to win a fight overseas, a championship fight overseas, for Nuke Wallace. He was the first black bantamweight, first black featherweight champion. He's from Canada. Fought over 1,000 fights. Many of them are unrecorded. He fought in the Battle Royale, but he fought 2 battle death matches, which means someone was guaranteed to die. And after the Battle Royale, 2 fighters who would be left, however they decided, one would have on like wraps glued with glass, and they would be blindfolded. He won 2 of those matches. George Dixon needs to be respected. He invented the shadow boxing. Dynamic fighter was George Dixon. All right, thanks again, Scrapbook Boxing. Let's move on. 100 years of world championship fights. Guess we can't leave this video without showing you the first black heavyweight champion of the world. Jack Johnson, 1908, defeats Tommy Burns. His name was Noah Russo. He was from Canada. Stood 5'7". And Jack Johnson would knock him out. It was the middle of the 14th round. They would stop the fight. The police would cut off the cameras. They didn't want to see a white fighter be knocked out by a black fighter. At this time, Jack Johnson was the colored heavyweight champion of the world. And he was following Tommy Burns all over the ring. He would follow him. Most of the fights were in Paris. And he nailed him and finally got the contract agreed. Lou McIntyre put that fight together, and he was the referee. And he had to pay up Tommy Burns. Tommy Burns wanted $30,000 for that fight. Jack Johnson got peanuts. But sometimes that's what you have to do in order to get the championship from another man. You'll get that money back in the future. Same thing with Floyd Mayweather, what he did with Oscar De La Hoya. Sometimes you have to just buckle down and accept the fight, accept the damn fight. And you have to. Archie Moore did it with Joey Maxim. Joey Maxim wanted $100,000 for his fight with Archie Moore. Archie Moore received $800. But Archie Moore held that crown, or held it for 10 years. And that's what you have to do. Otherwise, you'll miss out on opportunities. Scrapbook Boxing Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. Let's move on.